California, right? Oakland, you're in Oakland and
Mhm.
I've known Lisa for way too long. And
The early
Lisa,
aughts.
I know when we were blog babies. The thing I remember that was so sweet about Lisa is back when in the early days of blogging, we were all kind of like sharing like things that we were looking for when we went vintage shopping or thrift shopping. And you sent me the best coat. Do you remember that?
Oh my
It
God.
was
I
like,
told my kid that story the other day because
yes.
she's really into thrifting now. And I'm like, I'm the jacket whisperer. Like, I
Yeah.
always find jackets. I don't know what it is about me and jackets in thrift stores. And I have too
Wow.
many and I don't need any more, but I always find them. And then I remember you were like, I need a jacket.
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking for something specific, and you are the jacket whisperer because it came, and I was like, this blog world is amazing.
Well, it was like, because I can't, like, when you're in a thrift store and you find something really good, you like don't want to not get it, right?
Especially if you
Like,
know who it'd be perfect for or something like
well, like,
that.
how am I gonna pass up a $7 to $15 jacket,
I
right? Like,
know.
you just like, especially vintage, like yours was kind of like brownish, right?
It
If I
was. It was
remember
like a
correct.
camel color. I
Yeah.
could probably
Yeah.
find a
And
picture of it on my old blog. Yeah,
I
I should
would
do
love
that.
that. That would be amazing. But and so yeah, you needed a jacket. I found you a jacket.
It was such a sweet gesture, and it's cemented in my brain because I don't have that kind of thrifting karma. Not with coats. So,
I
um,
don't with everything, but
yeah.
coats are my thing. I don't know why. I don't know why the
It's
universe
a
wants
good
to send me
it's
coats.
a very good talent to have. So I brought Lisa on because you're also the color whisperer, and Lisa has written a book which I refer to a lot called A Field Guide to Color. She does some amazing art installations, and you recently
Uh,
launched a color meditation deck, which
yeah.
I ordered and it's coming, but it's like, thank you. Yes. See how pretty the cover is? So she's gonna, color is one of the things that you all talked to me about as wanting some more confidence and some more tips in. And so Lisa's like the perfect person to just have a little casual discussion about color. Lisa is your color, it's mainly in painting, although you
Mhm.
have made a quilt or two in your life. I made a quilt for
I
you.
have. Although I'm a total novice, not very good. Like, binding kills me every time. I don't know
Yeah.
how you guys do the binding. I just am like, what?
But I think
I
it's fun
love
when an
quilts.
artist makes a quilt because you're making
Yeah.
it for like reasons of like you want to make it for someone, and you take your color sense and you put it into the quilt. It doesn't matter if if the construction isn't like you think the rules should tell you it should be.
Yeah, but I always want my binding to be neater. Like, I just need to practice. I mean, the last like quilt I made was one that was actually about color stories. So I collected color stories from people and then I
Uh-huh.
spoon flowered. I was actually going to do quilt blocks, but it turned out to be too complicated. So I just spoon flowered a top and a back. So the top had people's colors as they picked them, and the back had the stories that related to the colors.
Oh
And then
wow.
I sandwiched it with, little hand stitching in the corners of each colored story, and then I did a black and white binding.
Oh
But that
my
was my last
gosh.
quilt.
I love that
Yeah, for
idea.
sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Um so let's talk about color because you teach color, you're a professor, and you talk about this on a regular basis. So, tell us about your approach to using color in your artwork.
Well, I mean, I think color if you like color, you really usually really like color. And color's like integral just to our lives. Like the things that are surrounding us are always colored. Like there's a lot of like real science and theory and marketing that goes into color. Like when
Yeah,
Christine Buckton Tillman and I did chroma, like we realized there's a lot more blue in the world than any other color. Like we got so many
so
blue
funny.
objects. It was like, wow, we could do a whole blue chroma with no other colors. Like, so it's really interesting to think about that. And then when I was an undergrad, there wasn't a color theory class for me to take. So I was kind of frustrated. Like, I wasn't sure how to mix certain colors together. It was all really like trial by error and fire, really, to like figure
Hmm.
stuff out. And so then I started doing my own research. So I went through and like read Albers and Itten and like looked at the Munsell system, like and started Pantone systems, like looked at all these color systems. And like they were really cool and awesome and scientific, but they're kind of skewed male and like kind of really formal. Like, here's the process, this is what happens. And I felt like color's a lot more fun and personal than kind of what I was reading in terms of color theory. And then I just practiced, like, just, you know, constantly working with color. And I haven't scientifically proven this, but I'm pretty sure I'm one of those people with 4 cones because I can really see differentiations between, like, really subtle differentiations between color. And so I, learned how to mix color really well. I learned how to see colors really well. Like, is that a cool green or a warm green? And then, actually you introduced me to your editor.
Yes.
And when I was thinking about writing a completely different book. And then I wanted to like do this collection of things. And she was like, well, I think you need to write it. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I really want to write that much. And she was like, okay, well, if you have any other book ideas. And I was going down to Craftcation to do a color class. And I was like, oh, this is what I should do. I should do a color book because all the books out there don't quite fulfill the thing that I want or that I am looking for when I've been researching color. And I wanted a much more personal and like light-hearted way to talk
Yeah.
about color. And so that's how the book came about. And then in between each chapter came a color meditation. And that's how those kind of got into the world. And then that's why the deck happened because everybody was like, color meditation. Like it
Yeah.
became this thing that
Yeah.
people were like, oh, this is really like A, fun, B, intuitive, C, not stressful.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can make a mistake and throw it away and nobody really cares, but you also learn a lot. Like I
Yeah.
think the best way to learn about color is to just use color.
Use
And we're
that
often
muscle.
so afraid, like, like if I have a stash of fabrics and I'm not sure I want 2 colors to go together, I probably am not going to put them together unless I really know I'm going to like it. And
Right.
you don't know that right
Right.
away unless you
Right.
practice, right? Or
Right.
like I don't want to make a painting out of expensive paints that cost a fortune if I think I'm going to hate it and throw it
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
So like all of this gives you like the freedom, the permission. It's really interesting how we all just need permission to do this stuff, but
We
like
do.
permission to play and to like discover and to like learn about your own sense of color, which is highly individualistic.
It
Everybody's
is.
sense
And it's very
really different.
intuitive to each person.
Totally.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
reason that your approach to color appeals to me so much is because I came from an apparel design background. And I it was in the 90s when colored denim was like very, very popular. And we were taking I don't know if you remember the jeans, Maritain Francois Gerbeau jeans, but that's who I worked for. And so he would
Okay.
design a line for the French market that was very expensive, but he, of course, wanted to be in the North American market. And so,
Right.
me, this little person in North Carolina, would take his designs and we had to plug it into the American market. And so, we had uh, a palette each season of colored denim. And like you, I would sit at the end of a dye bath because we would dye our jeans at a dye house, and I would say that green's too blue. That green
Right.
is, yeah. And so um, And then the next season, we would look at the data, look at what worked, but we also had to use our intuitive sense of, well, what would make this palette that we're going to have to bring forward feel new? Like, what
Right.
color would I add in? And
Right.
when I was in college studying all of that, I actually did not study color theory at all. And it was only
Uh-huh.
because it did not work in my schedule at the time.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
what I realized was, the color wheel doesn't really energize me. It doesn't inspire me. And I
Uh-huh.
think it's because, like yourself, I've exercised that color muscle so much that um, it comes more naturally to me, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it's just practice. It really, I mean, it's practice.
Yeah.
Color mixing, color seeing, being able to match colors, understanding like intuitively what's going to go together, or even like what's not going to go together but be interesting
Right.
is
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
practice.
Well, and I explained in
Yeah.
a workshop that I just taught last week, I explained, I at one point was like, I'm really not crazy about the color red. And I felt
Hmm.
like that was like this overarching, uh, overgeneralizing approach to red. So I made a quilt with only reds, and every different color of red that I could find in my stash, or if I was out somewhere and I saw a fat quarter of fabric that, I thought would be good for it. And what I started to learn focusing that much on red was that um, certain reds are more exciting to me than other. Like, I wouldn't even have red in my house. I just didn't
Hmm.
like the color red. And
Hmm.
so I tell people, force yourself or challenge yourself to work with a color that you don't like, to really explore what it is about it that you don't like.
Yeah, I mean, I try to do that all the time when I'm teaching color meditations. Like pick a color, pick two colors that you hate, like that you're really
Yeah.
like blech, and
Yeah.
like force yourself to put them in as many varieties as you can, and then just see if you still really hate them. Because I think sometimes maybe like we dislike a color, but then we like it when it's next to something else, or like
Exactly.
we when we see a lot of it, like what you were saying, like when you see a lot of reds, you're like, oh, I like the pink reds, or no, I like the maroon reds, or
Yeah.
like whatever it is, you start to figure out like what can bring you some excitement or joy or interest in a specific color. Like
Yeah.
I think that's gold, really, like in the
Yeah.
creative process is kind
Yeah.
of like, instead of always, because like I feel like we all have our go-to, like I like turquoise and a certain color green together. Like I just do. And it's really easy for me to put those together. But then it's like, who wants to do 30 pieces of artwork
Just
with
that.
those
Yeah.
two colors
Yeah. Yeah.
together?
I
Yeah.
know. Well, and you remember how I was just talking about this with a friend the other day. Remember how they used to do your color um, for your face? Like, are you fall or winter or
Yes.
spring?
Yes.
So, what's funny to
Yeah.
me is that I was little when people were doing that. But I mean, every woman in my family would do that. And it's funny how you're told you should wear gold jewelry, or you should
Right.
wear, brown or, warm colors. And that really sticks with you.
Hmm.
You start to have these
Yeah.
preconceived ideas.
Especially when you think someone who's like educated or an expert is like telling you those things, and you're
Yeah,
like, oh, okay, like,
I'll never wear
but
gold jewelry again. Yeah,
who cares?
I know. I know. Well, and the other thing that people in who make quilts are often told, which I don't necessarily agree with, is that when they make a quilt and they're looking for color inspiration, to look to their closet and see what they wear, because sometimes that will show up in their quilts. And I wear black every single day. That doesn't work for me
Right. And your quilts
because
are not like monochromatic. I mean,
they're
they
like the
are, but they're not
opposite
all.
of, yeah, they're
Yeah.
they're like
Yeah.
the opposite of
Yeah.
what I wear. But I think I wear black because in the apparel industry, um, you were always pressured to wear like the newest clothes and things like that. And
Right.
so little minions like myself got very used to just wearing a lot of black because we felt updated and we didn't have to spend a lot of money on our
Right.
clothes.
Well, because black is really timeless, and if you get like a new piece of jewelry or a new scarf or something, then it feels like it's a
Yeah.
totally different outfit because it's just
Yeah.
black.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
So yeah, I
yeah.
don't really believe in that. I kind of feel like um I want people who make quilts who want to learn to design their own and to exercise their color muscles. I really want them to look at it almost as a canvas. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest instead of looking in your closet, like looking to the stuff that you own or outside, like to nature, and
yeah,
like even using something like the Pantone app to be like, I like the colors right here, take a photo of it and
yeah,
have like if you can't pull the colors out yourself, have the app pull the colors out for you. So you're like,
yeah,
okay, now I have a palette, right? And you
yeah,
can like expand on that palette if you want to. But I
yeah.
feel like that's way more fun than I mean, my closet is chaotic.
I
I
know.
don't wanna
My
make a
mine's
quilt
just
with that
boring.
many colors.
Mine's just boring. Yeah. It would be a sad day if Blair had to make quilts just with the colors in her closet. They'd be
Yeah.
black, white, gray, and brown.
Have you made a quilt with those
No, I actually so I bought all of
colors?
these different textured black fabrics. Like some were like, they had like some jacquard on them, or some were
What?
textured like with dobbies. And I thought maybe I'll make like a Victorian morning quilt and just make it really textured or
Ooh,
something like that. It's on my
that would
bucket
be
list.
beautiful.
I know it'd be fun. So, but I
Yeah.
haven't done it yet, but it's in the back of my mind. And then maybe, um, add some like there was a quilt at QuiltCon years ago, which I thought was really, really cool. And I can't remember. I can't remember who did it, but it was a white quilt and it was sort of sewn inside out so that all the seams were exposed.
Oh, we're out facing. Yeah, that's cool.
Yes, with neon pink thread. So that was like
Oh,
the detail.
beautiful.
And I was like,
Beautiful.
I love that. That's so
That's
pretty.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that. I mean, I always tell people kind of what you're saying in my workshops. I'm like, I learned that red still doesn't excite me, but red next to certain colors can
Mhm.
really be exciting to me.
Mhm.
Like it's just I tell everybody I have a friend here who her Instagram handle, she's an artist and her Instagram description is passionately curious. And I'm like, learn to be passionately curious about what colors resonate with you, I think.
Mhm.
Don't you
Mhm.
think? I just
Yeah,
think,
totally. I
yeah,
think the more curious, the more open, the more experimental, the more willing you are. Like you can correct a color mistake. Like there, just go for it. Like you have to
yeah,
try it. You can't I think fear is your biggest enemy really in any creative process.
it is. It
Like
is. It is.
I've tried to learn to turn that fear into a positive. So, like, I know when I'm spooked and scared that I'm probably on the right path. Like, when I'm like
Yeah.
terrified of what I'm doing, I'm like, oh, okay, no, actually, that means I'm in the right spot. So, like,
Yeah.
instead of being like, oh, I'm scared and then stopping, it's like, oh, I'm scared, go forward,
Yeah.
which is really counterintuitive. But it's been incredibly helpful for me in the
Yeah.
studio to just like, you're scared for a reason. You're scared because this is new. You're scared because you're out of your comfort zone. You're scared.
Right.
And those are all good things, not bad things.
Well, there was like a sound bite from David Bowie going around Instagram a couple weeks ago that I saved where he was in an interview and he was like, you walk into the water and you go just beyond where you feel comfortable. Like that's where all the magic happens. And
Yeah,
that's such a good thing to
totally.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because when you're making a quilt, and I'm sure when you're painting as well, it's like you can study a color and you can add that color in your individual blocks, and you really have to make them, be willing to scrap them if they don't work, because
Mhm.
you have to figure out like, okay, if I'm going to
Mhm.
use this bright blue, it's like, how much of that do I need before this becomes a bright blue quilt versus
Mhm.
a quilt with bright blue accents and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that we talk about in art, right? Like, or design, you talk about like harmony and balance, right? So, like,
Yeah,
what, like, one little blue square can do a lot. Two blue squares does something different. And like, do they need to be next to each other or like diagonal from each other or really
right,
far apart or really close together? Those all have different like feelings, like they'll
right.
emote something different. And that also is really personal. Like, I think you and I both like kind of like minimal and lots of negative space and stuff that
Yes,
we look
yes,
at. And other people don't, and that's fine. But I think like figuring out what works for you and like what resonates with you is like half the battle. Like, okay, this
yes,
is what I like. And then being
yes.
able to like figure out why you like it is like the next step.
Exactly. And I'm reminded, so this painting back here, if my
Yeah.
hand, so that I did years ago, and I was experimenting with painting some of my quilt blocks on canvases, and I was
I
painting
remember
like
that.
the whole quilt. And Lisa actually like told me or suggested, she's like, what if you like just blow it up and do like one block on the whole thing rather than trying to fit the whole quilt? Which I was like, duh, that makes total sense. But I needed somebody else to tell me. But
Right.
that was the result of that exact suggestion. And it's like my favorite little piece
Aw.
from all that little painting period. I really enjoyed that painting period when I was painting all of those quilt blocks, but
Yeah.
being in a studio with paint and fabric like constantly does
Not a
not
good
work. I was
idea.
so
Yeah.
stressed out all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Well, and
So
also like the potential for damage to either is high. Like,
I know. And if
like, I
something
could
gets
ruin a bunch of
damaged,
fabric.
yeah.
Yeah. Or I could ruin a painting by fabric falling on
Exactly.
it. Like neither is a good situation.
I was so stressed out that whole time. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's from that conversation, and that was like that painting would look completely different if it
If it was
were
the whole.
if it was the whole quilt like fit into a square. Yeah. So,
Yeah, well,
um
especially because the squares aren't giant. So it's like one
right.
thing to do like a life-size quilt painting of a life-size quilt, but you were working on these small things. So I think
Yeah.
like shifting scale is always a really interesting thing to do. So
It was a fun thing to play with. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
When people are in their studio and they have a quilt pattern in their hand, but they want to make their own color story, do you have
Yeah.
like a good place for them to start thinking about that in a like how personally, like how would they approach that design? Do you have any good places to start?
Sure. I mean, okay, like I said before, I think looking around you, so like looking at a magazine or like a flower that you really like or like I mean, I like vintage stuff. I always look to vintage fabric and dresses and patterns for inspiration. I also have like a book of old wallpapers, which I'm always like, I
Oh,
like the color
fun.
combinations in vintage stuff. So, like, vintage wallpapers had some pretty cool color combinations. Um, I think like if you want to and can start painting, then I would suggest just start painting colors that you like
Hmm.
together,
Hmm.
and trying things, unusual things. Like I remember one day I was painting with Courtney Cerruti and I was like, I need a color, give me a color. And I had just put down indigo. And she's like, oh, I really like terracotta and indigo. And I was like, I put it down and it blew my mind because I was like, I never would have chosen terracotta
Yeah.
to go with indigo. Like it was just like, but it was gorgeous. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's genius. So then I started playing with that color combination in like various like, and it makes sense because blue and orange are complements and indigo and terracotta are kind of complements. So it makes
Yeah.
sense like intellectually, but I had never like that was just a never go-to combination. So then I started like paling it out like pale blue and pale orange and like,
Yeah.
so like taking one idea and just kind of running with it like you did with all the reds, like just kind of
Yeah.
figuring out like what are the possibilities here? what do I like? And even like what I don't like. Okay, so
Yeah.
I don't want to do these two colors together. I mean, I think one of the things that I feel like I see a lot of are people get frustrated when they don't like something. And I'm always like, you should be excited because you just figured out you don't like that. So, like,
Yeah.
you don't ever have to do it again. But it's a really good thing to know, like, oh, I don't like red and orange next to each
Yeah.
other, like
Yeah.
ever, no matter what I do. Like,
Look, you
okay,
got Toby's
genius. So now
attention. Look
don't
at that.
ever. Yeah. Yeah.
I know. It's that's stuff that you're figuring out. And then, I think um it's, the old tried and true, like, go out, and I know in Santa Fe this summer, we've had so much rain that the weeds are blooming. It's just stuff that never
Must be
blooms
pretty.
is blooming. It's
Yeah.
really pretty, but I find myself going out with my camera and taking
Yep.
pictures close up of these like blooming weeds
Yep.
and then bringing them back in and looking at the different colors, and that would be a good place to
Mhm.
start to blooming weeds. Yeah, I could do
Totally.
blooming
I mean,
weeds. Yeah.
like Santa Fe, how the sky meets the ground, talk about like blue and terracotta, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really endless. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm always like, whenever I feel stuck, I just look around. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's a good,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And then
just
if I'm
becoming
really
more
stuck,
intuitive. Yeah.
yeah, and then if I'm really stuck and really lazy, like I just think about the science of who picks colors in a palette and why they lay them out in this order. And I'm just like, I'm gonna trust
Yeah.
your genius. So I just go
Yeah.
in the order
Yeah.
because like I can't, or I'm feeling like just like, oh, I don't know what colors I want to put next to each other. And I mean,
Yeah.
you can go, you can go vertically, you can go horizontally, you could go
Yeah.
diagonally, like you could just start like playing around with that. And like that to me is just like when I don't want to think and I can't think of anything, but I feel like I need to make something, like that's always a go-to. Like,
Yeah.
okay, just go in the order.
Yeah, just pick a starting point that you trust in something like that, or like, a
Yeah,
flower or something like that, and
yeah,
just start playing.
yeah,
That's very
yeah.
cool. Thank you so much for this. This is Lisa's book, A Field Guide to Color. I've got it like marked. It's like I use it all the time. It's just
I love
pretty to
it.
look
Have you
at.
painted in it or are you leaving it
No, because
unpainted?
all the paints in our household are in my husband's office. So and
Okay.
he's got a table set up in there now. So I really want to, it's so much easier to paint, like even with just like a little watercolor palette, like you said. Um,
Yeah.
so I want to do it. Yeah, because I think it's super fun. And then your meditation deck, explain a little bit about what that is.
So whoa, upside down. It might be backwards because I can't flip my thing because you're in
Nope,
charge
it's
of the
right.
meeting. But okay. Um, so uh once the book came out, in between each chapter is a color meditation. And I came
Okay.
up with this practice kind of by accident. Like I'd been trying to meditate because everyone was telling me I should meditate and I was exhausted and I felt like meditation would be good for me. And I really sucked at it. It was like every time I tried to sit down, like I was like, I'm not holding my hands right, or I can't sit still, or I'm not comfortable enough, or I keep
It sounds
wiggling
hard.
around, or I don't know, I could not shut off my brain. Like occasionally I could. And then I would try guided meditations, but I was really picky about the voice. So it's like if it was a certain
Yeah,
voice, I was like, I can't do this. It was like
I am
it was
with you
almost
there.
like stupidly traumatizing. Like it was really stressful and it shouldn't have been stressful. So one day I was painting and I realized that because I'd picked a shape, I was working on this idea for garlands. And so I was like, okay, I want to paint some garlands out to see if this is really going to work or, if this is going to be something I do. And I was painting and I was painting dots and I was like just kind of shifting the amount of water in the dots. And I was just kind of like, okay, dots going up, going down. And as I was painting, I was realizing I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just like, okay, what color comes
Yeah,
next? How much water do I need? And my mind really emptied. And I was like, this is meditating.
I love
Like,
that.
and I felt really good afterwards. I was like,
Yeah,
oh. like I feel focused and I can concentrate and I shut everything else out. And okay, this is meditating. So then I kept
Yeah.
doing it. Like I tried different shapes and I tried different techniques. And then I was like, oh, I could try like different brushes, like figure out what brushes do. And I realized this was like that play space that artists and people always talk about, that you need like the space where you can let happy accidents happen, where nothing's
Right.
precious. And it became that. And so I kept
Yeah.
doing it and doing it. So then I stuck it in between each chapter in the book because I was like, other people should do this too. I don't like, I shouldn't own this. Like, this
Yeah.
should be out in the world. And then people responded like even more enthusiastically than I ever could have imagined. So
Yeah.
it was like, people were like, this makes sense. Like, I love this. So then I did a 30-day creative bug challenge and I came up with 30 prompts. And then I was like, like I love decks, like tarot decks and like, writing prompt decks. And so I approached Roost and I was like, do you guys want to do a color meditation deck? And they're like, yes.
I love that.
So I spent,
Love that.
the summer of 2020, I had two book projects, and I spent the summer of 2020 painting in actual size, 5 by 5. I came up with 52 prompts. So, and
I
then
love it.
I also came up with 10 parameter cards. So the deck is divided. So there's 52 prompt cards, which also, because Roost is so fantastic, they like colored the back of them in
Oh,
like
wow.
rainbow
They're so
cards. Yeah.
pretty.
And I know. Well, this one's now out of order because I used this at a class in Wisconsin. But when they're in order and you like look at them on the side, like you can see the rainbow, which is just,
Oh,
I love
that's
it so much.
wonderful. Love
It's
those
crazy.
details.
So I know. They're so good. So there's 52 prompts of like shapes and things that you can try, and then there's 10 parameters. So
Okay.
like one of the things that I really like about color meditation is I like to set myself up with some rules, because I feel like the more rules you have, the actual more freeing it is. Because when you're staring at a blank piece of paper, you're like, what do I do? Or even if you have a shape, like, okay, I'm gonna do crepe streamers. Like, what do I do?
Totally agree. Totally
Right.
agree. Yeah.
So the 10 parameters are color schemes, tints and shades, warm versus cool, scale and organization, fast versus slow, inside versus outside, a limited color palette, saturation play, rainbow order, and then palette order, which is what I just told you is one of my
Yeah.
favorite easy tricks. So my idea was, you could just pick one card, crepe streamers. You could pick
Okay.
one card and a parameter card. So crepe streamers and palette order. You could pick two cards, like concentric and crepe streamers. So I would do crepe streamers in a concentric order. I mean,
Oh, that's
you could
fun.
keep going. You could go concentric, crepe streamers, and rainbow order.
Yeah.
Or limited palette, right? So like you can pick as many cards as you want. And my hope was that, of course, some people would want to do exactly what they saw on the card, and that's great. But my hope is always that people see what's on the card and then go some other direction.
Yeah.
So,
It's just a
like,
starting point. Yeah.
concentric doesn't have to be squares. They could be
Yeah.
concentric circles. They could be
Yeah.
concentric triangles, or diamonds, or, whatever. So it's like, not only do you have all the prompts, but you have variations on the prompts, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
hopefully it's like limitless that way. So it's not like, I wanted people to have a way to engage in some sort of like daily, weekly, whatever it is, ritual that made it
Mm-hmm.
really easy and
I
made
love
it so
that.
that they would actually do it. Because I think the biggest battle in art making is the discipline and the doing
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always like, you can take 5 minutes for a color meditation, or you could take 3 hours,
Yeah.
and both are valid
Yeah.
and both are, great. So there's
Yeah.
also like a teeny little book that gives you like the very, very basics, kind of
Yeah.
like some of what's in the guide, but a little bit different, like some new illustrations, which was fun.
Yeah.
And just some really brief information. And then the box, like again, the details, like I wish you could touch it, but like it's a satin
I
printing.
love it.
So it's
It's
like
really pretty.
it
Yeah.
And then they put like I didn't know it's magnetized, which is awesome. And then I didn't know this was happening, but they put this little ribbon in so you can help pop out all the
Pop
colors.
out your, yeah. It just would look so
Yeah.
pretty on your shelf, you know? It would
Yeah.
make you want to pull it out and do it.
Well, and what was super sweet was when I was pitching the idea to Roost and they said yes. And I was like, okay, well, should we do a playing card size? And immediately, Audra, my editor, was like, no, they need to be bigger because like I want to be able to like put them on my wall. Like if I don't want
Oh,
to paint them,
yeah.
I want to just look at them. So I was like, okay, how big? And she's like, I think we should shoot for 5 by 5. So I painted all these actual size, which is also interesting because I
Oh,
had
wow.
never, like for the book, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
So these are all actually the size that I painted,
That's so funny. I
which
see
is
a
pretty
lot of
cool.
the cards that would actually work to do like quick quilt blocks too. Like if you were exploring like a stack of
Yeah.
colors or
Well,
something.
I mean, this is inspired by a geese bend quilt, like for
Yeah,
sure. I
that
mean,
would be
it's
a really pretty quilt.
the prompt is rectangles, but you
That's awesome.
know,
Yeah,
it's really,
we know
and there's
quilters
like
know
a
rectangles.
all squares.
Yes.
You could break the rules, right?
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
yeah,
for sure.
this could be a cool quilt.
Oh my
Like
gosh, I
diamond.
love that. Those are
Yeah.
diamonds. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
And
is
then
really
let's
pretty.
see. I'm trying to see the other ones that are like quilty. Oh, this could
Maybe
be
we'll do a
cool. Like
challenge in the
maybe,
membership where we'll like make a quilt from one of your color meditation
oh
cards or
my
make a quilt
God.
block. Wouldn't that be
Oh,
fun?
that would be, wait, can somebody do this one?
Oh my gosh, I'll do that one
Okay.
this afternoon.
Or even like
I
here,
love it.
this is one with a lot of black and like gray and then like a color pop.
Ooh, yeah. Well,
I
I can't
mean,
wait
and
to
this
get
is
mine so I can look
hexagons.
at it.
Like this is quilty.
Oh,
Like,
that's very quilty.
but
Oh, I love that.
yeah. Yeah.
I like the colors in
There's a
that.
lot of quilty ones in here. Now that I'm
Well,
looking at it. Like even
I
like
know
this could be
that could, and I was even looking like this would be a fun
yeah.
quilt. I love that.
Yeah.
This is in your book.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of possibilities. But,
Yeah.
well, this was fun. Thank you. I really, I hope that people got like just some ideas about just having fun with color because
Yeah.
that's really what it's all about.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. Even if you wear black
Or
every day, don't be afraid of color.
even if you are afraid, that's good. Go with the
Yeah, it's
fear.
true. Yeah, go with the fear. Yes. Okay. So don't, so you said you did a color meditation on Creative Bug, like a 30-day.
Yeah, there's a 30-day challenge. So there's
Okay.
30 prompts in that, and you can watch me paint all 30 days. So,
Oh,
because I
great.
think that's the
Okay.
other thing. Some people who aren't familiar with watercolors or maybe don't quite know how they want to experiment with them. I mean,
Yeah.
it's sped up, but you can see me actually paint each day. So I
Okay.
feel like that's really helpful.
So I'm going to link to all of Lisa's, like her Creative Bug, daily practice classes and her book and all of that below. But oh, one last thing I wanted to ask you. So if somebody wanted to do some of these color meditations, they don't normally paint. Um, will any paint palette do, like any watercolor palette, will it do? They
Yeah,
don't
I
have
mean,
to
it
go out and
doesn't
buy
even
really
have to
expensive
be.
ones.
No. So I have a dumb Amazon store that lists the palettes and the brushes and the paper that I tend
Okay.
to use. I try to encourage people to buy that stuff locally, but you can
Okay.
at least see the brand. I list resources in both the book and in the deck,
Okay.
like where to
So they
go
could
for
just,
supplies.
yeah.
I mean, so like Michael's has an artist loft watercolor set, which I don't think is really handy. Otherwise, I'd show it to you. That's like, oh, wait, here it is. Okay. Here's my tried and true Michael's artist loft set that I think is like $7.
Oh, perfect.
Um,
Oh, and it's so
yeah.
pretty. Yeah. Okay.
It's so pretty. So the thing just briefly to know, because people ask this, cheaper paints have less pigment, usually are more chalky, aren't as intense in the color. It doesn't matter, like you can still learn a lot from them. You
Yeah.
might want to spray the palette down to wet them before you use them because
Okay.
they've got so much filler in them, they don't work as well. Something
Okay.
like this is a Viviva pan set. These are incredibly pigmented. So like the color will be really bright and really
Really
intense.
saturated and
Um,
yeah. Okay.
yeah, so you kind of get what you pay for, but I encourage people to use whatever they have. And then the only
Okay.
other thing I would suggest is don't use like computer paper because it's too thin and the water will go right through it. So you want to get like a decent mixed media paper,
Okay.
or like cheap watercolor paper. I list a couple of inexpensive brands on that Amazon site, like Strathmore's. They
Okay.
have like a student grade watercolor, which is really great. Or Winsor
Okay.
Newton has like little postcard watercolor like papers that you can get that
Okay.
are not that expensive. But I would invest in
Perfect.
slightly better paper because otherwise you'll just get frustrated.
Okay.
But that's
All
it. You
right.
don't need anything special.
Cool.
You can use gouache, you can use ink, you can use acrylics if you have them.
Okay.
Like it's really whatever you have.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you. So, for those of you that join the membership, Lisa is going to go through a color meditation with us inside of the membership. So, when you join, you'll be able to access that and watch all of this in action. But in the meantime, thank you so much for being here, Lisa. I appreciate it. I can't wait to see you in January. I think I'll be down there.
That would be great. It's been
I
a long
know.
time. I feel like we know each other, but we don't see each other.
I know we've only actually met just at Craftcation that one time in
Yeah, that
person. Is
one
that
time.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta
Yeah.
remedy that. That's not gonna
I
work.
know.